The arena for high-level blade combat is a place of absolute zero margin for error. Ari Ben-Zvi, a world-renowned Israeli tactical instructor and a master of military-grade sword defense, was a man who believed in the straight-line kill. His system was built on the principle of retzvot, continuous explosive motion meant to overwhelm an opponent's nervous system before they could even draw a breath. During an international weapons symposium in Subic Bay, Ben-Zvi watched a group of local practitioners training with the kampilan and the ginunting, the traditional swords of the Philippine archipelago. He mocked the circular, almost rhythmic weaving of the Filipino blades. He called it ceremonial flair, claiming that in a real blade-to-blade encounter, the flow would be shattered by a single high-velocity Israeli thrust. He challenged the local master to a live-steel simulation, certain that his direct action doctrine would expose the Filipinos as dancers rather than warriors. The man who stepped into the sunlight was Guro Panday Maliksi, a master of the Pakiti Tirsia Kali sword system. Guro Panday didn't look like a tactical instructor. He wore simple clothes and held a 24-inch ginunting, as if it were a part of his own arm. He didn't assume a combat stance, he stood with a relaxed, open guard that Ben-Zvi found insulting. The Israeli strategy was built on the spear entry. He planned to use a high-tension lunging thrust to the center mass, believing that the Filipinos' circular parries would be too slow to catch a linear strike moving at maximum speed. To Ari, the sword was a piston. To Panday, the sword was a current. The duel began with Ben-Zvi executing a burst entry, a movement so fast the audience barely saw his feet move. He launched a precision thrust aimed directly at Panday's throat, but Guro Panday didn't retreat, and he didn't try to block the steel. He utilized the slipstream pivot. As the Israeli blade hissed through the air, Panday rotated his body by a fraction of an inch and guided the flat of Ben-Zvi's blade with his own. The arena went cold as the tactical master felt his sword slip into a vacuum. Panday hadn't fought the force, he had stolen the momentum. Ari Ben-Zvi reset, his knuckles white against the hilt of his sword. He realized his spear entry had been bypassed, so he switched to a cleaving storm approach, a series of heavy diagonal slashes designed to break the opponent's guard through sheer physical pressure. He moved with a violence that seemed unstoppable, but Guro Panday was practicing the geometry of the arc. Every time Ben-Zvi's blade descended, Panday's ginunting met it at a 45-degree angle. He wasn't clashing edge to edge, he was shearing the Israelis' power away. If you're a true full-blooded Filipino who carries the spirit of Puso in your chest, show your support and subscribe to this channel right now. Join us to celebrate the profound and often secret influence of Filipino culture on the world stage. The shock began to ripple through the observers as they saw the aggressive neutralization of the Israeli failing. In Filipino swordplay, the goal is the destruction of the tool. Panday wasn't aiming for the body. He was aiming for the fingers and the wrist holding the sword. He utilized the snaking cut, a movement where his blade would flick over the Israeli's guard to tap the knuckles. Ben-Zvi felt the cold kiss of the steel on his glove over and over. He was data-rich in his combat drills, but he was currently bleeding out in a real-world simulation. He couldn't understand how a ceremonial dance was systematically removing his ability to hold a weapon. The most critical failure for the Israeli trainer was the rhythm trap. Ben-Zvi was trained in action-reaction loops, but Panday was moving in syncopated beats. He would slow down for a microsecond, drawing Ben-Zvi into a false sense of timing and then accelerate through the gap. Panday was practicing tactile mapping, using the faint vibrations of their clashing steel to read where Ben-Zvi's weight was shifting. The elite trainer was being calculated by a man who used the sword not as a weapon, but as a sensor. The Israelis' linear force was being eaten by the Filipinos' fluid intelligence. As the duel reached its peak, Ari Ben-Zvi was visibly sweating, his aggressive continuity breaking down into desperate wide swings. He decided to go for the Omega Strike, a full-body lunge designed to trade a minor hit for a lethal one. He threw everything into the forward motion, but Guro Panday transformed into the Shadow Weaver. He didn't move away, he spiraled inside the Israeli's reach. He utilized the close quarter hook. The audience witnessed the mathematical execution. As Ben-Zvi's sword passed over Panday's shoulder, the Filipino's ginunting was already at the Israeli's neck. Panday hadn't used strength, he had used positional dominance. He held the curve of his blade against Ben-Zvi's jugular, his body perfectly balanced while the Israeli was overextended and helpless. The tactical system had been dismantled by a cultural mastery that didn't need to shout to be lethal. Pandey had proven that the straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points, but the curve is the fastest way to the truth. The shock for the symposium was the realization that Pandey had been in control of the rhythm from the very first second. He had used structural bypassing, waiting for the Israelis' muscles to reach maximum tension before cutting the line of force. The Israeli trainer who had mocked the Filipinos as performers was now standing perfectly still, the cold edge of a ginunting reminding him that form is nothing without flow. He realized that his science was built for the gym, but Pandey's flow was built for the death ground. The elite had been schooled by a master of the long blade. The duel ended with Guru Pandey slowly lowering his sword and offering a deep bow. Ari Benzavi stood in the center of the ring, his breath heavy, looking at the man who had just killed him 10 times without ever breaking a sweat. The result was a total psychological and physical surrender for the Israeli doctrine. The shock wasn't just the defeat. It was the beauty of how the ceremonial Filipino style had turned into a surgical reality. Ari Benzavi walked over to Guru Pandey, and, in front of the entire international delegation, handed over his own tactical blade. "Guru," the Israeli said, his voice reflecting a profound professional shock. "I have trained elite units from 5 continents. I thought your flow was a weakness. I thought your weaving was for show." He looked at his own trembling hands. "I was wrong. Your dance is a map of my own destruction. I didn't lose to a man, I lost to a river of steel. How can you be so calm while you are taking my life?" Pandey offered a humble smile and returned the blade. "Ari," he said, "your art is for the soldier who wants to survive. Our art is for the sword that wants to live. In the Philippines, we don't attack the enemy. We direct his energy until he has nowhere left to go." He explained that the secret of Filipino swordplay is the absence of resistance, the discarded to let the enemy's own power be the blade that cuts him. "We don't try to be faster than you, Ari. We have the puso to be already there before you even move." The story of how the Israeli trainer mocked the Filipino practitioner fundamentally shocked everyone. It proved that in the reality of blade combat, high-tech drills are no match for high-flow heritage. The Israeli elite learned that the Filipino swordmasters are the architects of the arc, a force that can turn the most aggressive system into a lesson in humility. Guru Pandey had proven that Filipino puso and the ginunting flow of the islands are the ultimate combat technologies, capable of breaking any expert through pure descarte. The Filipinos hadn't just won a duel. They had reminded the world that the art of the blade is a heartbeat, and the Philippines is its home.